Okay. All right, now that I've finished up the rough build for the boxes, the next step will be to do the final assembly and glue up. So thus far, I've just used some pocket hole screws to hold everything in place, essentially cutting and fitting everything based on the dimensions that I came up with the design. So all that stuff's pretty straightforward, so I kind of glossed over it for the most part. Okay, so the two boxes are two different depths. In total, they still have the same seating space on both seats, but because of the depth, the hinge mechanism and placement are different on each side. Okay, so the wider bench has an additional, I don't know, approximately 5 inches towards the back. So the hinge placement had to be moved up a little bit. So I'm just using piano hinges, and I've got a small groove routed out to allow for the thickness of the hinges once it's closed. But essentially I added a piece of plywood here to support the bottom end when it's in its closed position. So there's no drooping when you sit down in the corner. The thinner bench will be placed closer to the wall. Now there's molding and trim that are going to be on the floor, so there's a slight offset between the back of the box and the back of the wall inside of the box. So this is offset about 1.25 inches in this way. Routed out a little groove for the piano hinge in the bottom here, but essentially this is mounted from the bottom of the bench top as opposed to the back like the other one. But they both work, they both open and close nicely. This I've yet to determine. I might leave this as a hinge top. I might open this up. Essentially this is going to be just another access to some outlets and whatnot that are going to be hidden on the back of the wall. Okay, so here's a quick and dirty little jig that I made up to basically figure out where the placement points are going to be for the gas struts. So this will be for the orientation of the hinges for the short bench with the offset. So I'll have to do this again for the larger bench with the hinges in a vertical orientation. And more importantly is where the pivot point is in relation to where these pivot points are. So basically it'll adjust from down here to up on the top. So I'll have to reconfigure this and we'll do another test. Okay, so here's the second hinge setup with the pivot point on the top surface. So we'll do the same thing. First mounting point, I'll have the lid a little off of 90 degrees and then have the bottom within basically the side component. So my super scientific method would be to sort of trace where the center point is along its kind of arc path. So somewhere along there. And then we'll do the same thing in the closed position. So instead of compressing it, I've basically measured out by my eyeball a distance between the two centers. So we'll do the same sort of thing. Pop this off, close it down, and then sort of arc it between roughly the center points of the closed position. So if I put the second pivot point approximately there, we should be good. So I'll just set that up quickly and we'll give it a test. All right, so I think that'll work. This is set up a little bit more securely in the actual bench. So these nails are, yeah, that's great. And there's just a little bit of extra space on the bottom here, so that's not a problem. So the white struts turned out to be undersized and could not lift the bench tops. So I swapped them out for a couple stronger ones, which introduced a new problem. Need like a magnet down there, I think. This is not good, this one. Shit. Does that need to go up a bit more? I think it needs to go up a bit more. Dang it. She's too strong. At this point in the project, the bench tops kept on popping open, but it was install day and they needed to be delivered to the client. So I began wrapping up the benches while racking my brain for a solution. On the drive over, I stopped at my local hardware store and picked up some latches that are commonly used on screen doors to keep them closed and installed them on site. Thankfully, they were just strong enough to hold the bench tops in the closed position so you could easily sit down without them popping open.